We are coming off an unforgettable week 7. So just how big is week 8 going to be? That top 10 showdown in Eugene has our man Yogi so fired up. He's spilling beer all over the place. It's Happy Hour presented by Deschutes. Glad you're here. Not a better sound.
And it is that type of day.
It is extra fresh and squeezy. Happy Hour. Drink it down, Yogs. Deschutes had it going for you. Yogi Roth, Ashley Adamson. That is how you start a week 8 happy hour, because I got to say, we are coming off one of the best college football weekends, Yogs, that I can remember. October 15th, 2022, just chef's kiss to you. That was fun, not just in the Pac-12, but across the country.
I think 3 of the best games. The final score was within 7 points when you add up points for and points against. I mean, it was epic, Ash. Like every time I was watching the film back in the Utah SC game, the film is shaking. Like the coach's copy, the all-22, the camera's moving. And I'm like, it must have been just bonkers in that stadium.
It was, you could tell how loud it was. And we have to start there because there's so much to talk about. But Utah and USC, we had this one circled on our calendars for months. And it lived up to the billing in every way. It was just an epic college football game. And I mean, when you look back at it, Yogs, it had it all. Like there was a big lead. USC jumps out to a big lead. You get a big comeback, an incredible crowd, star players getting hurt, but like still fully engaged. I mean, Eric Gentry, like that image of him running on one foot out of the tent to pump up his defense. And of course, Dalton Kincaid's emotion, like the 22 Forever helmets and Ty Jordan and Aaron Lowe's families there. And then you top it off with a pretty gutsy call by Kyle Whittingham to go for 2 and go for the win. And then they get the stand at the end. And then the euphoric celebration, it was awesome. It was just great. My hat's off to that football game. I know USC fans are disappointed. And we'll talk about that because I think, as Lincoln Riley said, they still have everything in front of them that they want. But that was as fun of a game as I think we've had in the Pac-12 in a long time. What were you thinking, Yogs, and were you able to watch it live? Because I know we had just finished up in Seattle, but when Kyle decided to go for 2, because I know exactly what was flashing through my mind. What was going through your mind?
The same thing. I, as you know, like we had our kids in Seattle. So I'm like, I got my phone, I'm watching the game, trying to carry some kids out of a restaurant and, whatever. But I wasn't going to miss that moment because we had a moment like that in week 1 that we all know of and every Utah fan knows of in Gainesville. Right. And I love that Kyle Whittingham didn't flinch in that regard. And he's always a realist, right? Whether it's talking about NIL or whether he's talking about the season, they know they have 2 losses. They know the reality in the CFP and they know they got to take risks. And I felt like that was the right move. And then to put it in his hands, it was poetic, right? Like we talk about great scripts. And as the players walked off the field and I saw Dalton Kincaid crying and I saw Caleb Williams crying, my first thought was like high school football, because you see these great games in high school football and all these emotion on these players. Then we get to college, and especially now we got transfers and NIL. Those 2 players are 2 transfers, 2 different situations in terms of how they transferred and why they transferred. 2 transfers. And you saw that emotion play out. And to me, I was like, hey, everybody who thinks it's like professionalized, it may be growing in that regard off the field, but 120 by 53 and a third is still all the things that we love. And I'd be lying if I didn't say, hey, let's run it back. Like that was my thought. Let's run it back. Let's see these 2 teams play again in Las Vegas. Maybe we'll get there. Who knows? But in that moment, man, it was redemption to a large degree. Yep. And, I felt even for USC after the game, they were like, okay, look out. Now we're coming. So
that's what happens. We've seen it, sometimes a well-timed heartbreaking loss. And I think if you play that game 7 more times in different locations, maybe play at a neutral site, maybe play at USC, like you're going to get a different outcome a bunch of different times. Like those teams were obviously very well matched. And I thought the exact same thing as you. I just was, as Cam Rising, as they were going for 2, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm just envisioning that heartbreaking loss in the swamp and that, pass that I'm sure that he's thought about and wanted back. And it was redemption. And it was a sweet moment for that team. And I will tell you, I got a text message from Ty Jordan's aunt. And she said that it was just like one of the best games and weekends ever. And she sent me all these pictures. It was the first time that Donna Lowe, Aaron Lowe's mom, had been able to see her son's locker that they, have for him in the Utah locker room. And so that she's sending all these pictures and videos of them, being in there with getting just soaked with the water baths, just pure euphoria. And I'm sure every Utah fan, I don't need to tell them this because they're all dialed in on social media, but if for some reason you haven't seen the video that the Utah Creative Department put together, it's about a 5-minute recap. It is unbelievable and well worth your time. I've watched it a couple times already. So hats off to Utah heading into the bye week, feeling pretty damn good in Salt Lake City, as they should. And you mentioned USC. I think you're right. It's like there's that chip that now is created. And it sounds like, according to Lincoln Riley, at least, that Eric Gentry and Jordan Addison's injuries, which looked significant from afar, are not season ending, and they're expected to get them back. So that's huge. And they've got a bye week to reset and regroup and get healthy. And then they'll be at Arizona, which a game I think you'll be at.
Yeah, I'll be there. All right. I want to follow up. I want to flip it for a second, because you are the one among our network that have been so tightly connected to the stories of Aaron and Ty. Like, you went down and were part of like a big piece that anybody can find online. What's it been like to stay connected to those families, see those helmets, and then watch that outcome? And I'm sure you're getting texts probably in real time from those two individuals. Yeah,
I appreciate you asking that. I will say that getting to know those families last year was one of the most meaningful things of my entire professional career. And I've been doing this now for about 15 years. They, both of those families opened up their hearts to us last year and shared their stories. And I've been able to stay in touch. And Taka, I think you still chat with her every now and then too. Like, Taka is as good as it gets, Ty's aunt. And I was texting with her when she was headed down there, and she was showing me the helmets, and they each got to, both Donna and Taka got to take a helmet home with them. And it's just been cool. It's not, it wasn't a thing that happened last year that was really tragic that happened to that team, and then everyone sort of is moving on. Like, it is present within that program and what they stand for. And you saw even Kyle Whittingham giving them the game balls in the locker room, the emotion that overcame him. I mean, it is with them every day, and they feel those players in every moment. And it was cool. And just, it felt like, I mean, Utah had to win that game. Right. When you look back at it, you're like, no, of course they had to win that game. So we'll see. And it's very possible that we'll see those two teams again in Las Vegas. USC fans, I guess here's my question for you. Are you pulling for Oregon on Saturday? Or do you want to come in and spoil UCLA and then get another shot at them in the Pac-12 championship?
Yeah, I don't know. I think whoever wins that game, you want them to win out.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you're going to have a chance, because you'll play UCLA, you'll have a chance to then play even a higher ranked Oregon team. Or if you are the lone loss to UCLA, maybe a rematch. I don't know. I'm excited to get the bounce back opportunity, though, in Arizona, both them and Jed Fish's team in Tucson, Halloween weekend. Like, that'll be good. A good time.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to see what you and Ted are going to wear on the air, what your costumes are.
Totally. Well, hey, I want to tell you about my other buzz of the weekend.
Yeah.
Because I'm heading there this weekend. I'm heading to the farm. And I think Stanford, you go back and you study that game against Notre Dame. It was the most complete defensive effort they've had, I might argue, in 2 years, right? They beat Oregon last year in a dramatic game on the farm, but Oregon was able to move the ball and score. Notre Dame couldn't do anything. Like, their quarterback struggled. Their best player, their tight end, was shut down for the most part. And they did it with technique up front. Stephen Herron, like, player of the game to me. They did it in their back end of making plays. We all remember the Oregon State game and plays not made necessarily. I just want to say, like, to Lance Anderson and this program, like, that's a big win. And if you go glass half full, which David Shaw always does, in terms of also being a realist, like, that SC game, they moved the ball, fumbled it twice inside the 5-yard line. Oregon game, okay, they moved the ball. They had their moments, but not enough. The margin for error was so slim. Oregon State had a chance to win that game. All of us almost turned the TV off because we're thinking it's over in the last 45 seconds or so of the ball game. So I think that they're better than their reputation says their record is. So I'm excited for them, both them and ASU. Emory Jones seemingly going to start. I'm pumped about calling this game with JB Long this weekend.
Well, I'm pumped because I get to be there. So yeah, and I'm with you. And I think for me, what stood out about Stanford, and we were walking into our hotel in Seattle right when the final score, alert popped up on my phone. And I think I scared the hell out of the lady standing next to me because I let out a scream. It felt good. It was meaningful. And is this Notre Dame's best team? No, but anytime you can go to South Bend, especially coming off the start to the season that Stanford has had. And I'll tell you what happened to them at home last week with the way they lost that Oregon State game. I'm not going to say that Stanford ever has players that are just going to go lay down, but to see the way that they responded with all they've been through, and they came back and they played a heck of a game. And you mentioned it on defense, and they finally had some things fall their way. There were some, Casey Filkins lost the ball a few times, but they recovered all of them. They had those things that haven't gone their way up until this point this season kind of break their way. So, and now what's interesting about Stanford ASU, you look at it, you got two teams that are kind of in similar boats. They both have had tough starts, but they're now both coming off of wins that they're going to feel rejuvenated. And there's a chance that they could string a few things together that they could be playing some meaningful games towards bowl eligibility come November, which is, given where things were, I'm not sure we would have said that about either of those programs. So it's going to be fun, and we're going to have the whole kit and caboodle there, as they say. I'm looking forward to that. Can I give you my other buzz from the weekend, and then we got to dive into this game that we're going to see in Eugene on Saturday?
Sure.
I am going to send a case of fresh squeezed to Mike Sanford, and maybe 2 cases to Gerald Chapman, who made his debut as the Buffs defensive coordinator. He's the defensive line coach who was elevated after some staffing changes at Colorado. And they were to see Colorado was giving up over 40 points per game coming into this one. And to see the way that after a bye week and a change, it was like a totally new team. And they were playing with energy, and they were playing with purpose. And shout out to you, Colorado Buffaloes fans, who showed up. Family weekend almost sold out at Folsom Field for an 0-5 team, and you got rewarded that joy, especially to do it in front of families in a packed stadium. It was special, and that was one of my big buzzes of the weekend. I was really happy for the Colorado Buffs. Flip side of that, the buzzkill, I wanted to just embrace and hold and hug the entire Cal football team. That was a very tough, disappointing loss for Justin Wilcox. There's no question about that, Yobes.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're sending cases out, send a couple to Berkeley.
Yeah.
That was rough. Good to see Steve Greatwood. He's coming in as an advisor. When that was announced earlier today here on Tuesday, just to kind of offer another set of eyes. I think that's a good thing in terms of he has ties to Justin Wilcox and his staff and his program, ties to the OC. Obviously, everybody has their Oregon roots. So we'll see. You go back and you watch that game, and look, I think the effort from Colorado was off the charts, buzzworthy indeed. I think the mistakes from Cal was buzzkill worthy. Mm-hmm. It was, whether it was drops, sacks, it was anything that could happen did. And then you just isolate the end of the game, and you're they have their chances to tie the thing and see if they can go to another extra period. So I'm curious, if you said what game you're most looking forward to, there's the obvious one, which is the biggest one of the weekend in all of college football. But I want to see Cal play. I want to see him bounce back. Their defense, I like them. They uncharacteristic, some PIs, some blown assignments. They're gonna have to deal with one of the most explosive offenses in the country. Just we're on the heels of seeing that. Michael Penix Jr., shattering the record at UW in terms of single game passing yards.
516 yards.
Come on. Ted Robinson, I love him for it. He looks at me and goes, there's an element of arena football. Both teams in Arizona and UW were just throwing shots and making plays. But I look forward to that. You got the storylines of Jackson Sermon and, his father. I think Cal bounces back. I don't know if it's enough because you got to score. Coming into the weekend, Ash, teams that won in Pac-12 scored 33 points. Mm-hmm. I bet that's higher heading into this weekend, just based on the explosive outputs that we saw in so many games. But you got to score 4 or 5 touchdowns to be in the mix. Cal's got to find a way to make it a little easier on offense because they've hurt themselves. They've imploded at times. They look great at times. So I'm really curious to watch them compete. Yeah,
that's a 7:30 kick in Berkeley. And I think it's going to be interesting because for all the reasons that you just pointed out, I got a shout out to Michael Penix Jr. and Roma Dunze. They came on the set with us after the game, and it was like they had barely broken a sweat too. They were awesome. They were as well spoken. When you talk about just unbelievable representatives of a program. Like those guys, not only in the way that they're playing, and we had Rome watch that catch in like 5 different angles. The one where he like tipped it to himself and caught it. And Michael was like, yeah, at first I was so pissed, but then I knew he had it. I knew he was going to come down with it. And my favorite line was Nigel Burton saying at the end, he's like, people say you guys are putting up video game numbers, but video games are looking at YouTube being like, damn. I was like, that's as well said, Nigel. So yeah, it was a fun night in Seattle. And certainly I think it will be interesting to see what Cal's going to be able to do against a Washington defense that certainly has struggled as well. That hasn't been the defense that we've come to know in the past. And can Kalen DeBoer's team get their first road win of the season? They're 0-2 obviously on the road. So we'll see how that all plays out. But let's not, now we've made people wait however long, 12, 15 minutes to get into what is like the juiciest, best, most exciting game that we've had 2 weeks to kind of build towards. And now we've got the last 2 undefeated teams in Pac-12 play, Oregon and UCLA, top 10 matchup. First top 10 matchup, Yogs, in the Pac-12 since we just looked this up. Do you remember when?
I'm going to guess it was Stanford UW.
So Pac-12 championship game.
Oh, got it. Good call.
2016. And this is 9th ranked Colorado against 4th ranked Washington. That was the last time that the Pac-12 had an actual top 10 matchup, but it was earlier that season. So you're not too far off.
Wow. How about that for Colorado? You can be in the top 10. Like,
I know it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago, but this, I mean, there's the storylines write themselves and the environment's going to be amazing. Obviously College game day is going to be there. I'm excited for me to see UCLA, their road win at Colorado. Obviously they went to Colorado and showed up and won and got out of there with a win, but this will be an environment and a team that they haven't played on the road yet this season. So for me, I'm excited to see how their defense show up and continues to show up. And then DTR, you've just continued to play with a chip on your shoulder and prove people wrong week in and week out. It's like, you just keep getting better. And so is there another step to be had? And who else? Zach Charbonnet, Jake Bobo, like who's going to be the guy that we're talking about at the end of the week? So I'm excited. What's the matchup, Yogs? What do you think determines the outcome of this one?
Okay. Well, there's so many good ones to your point. Like I love the offensive line of Oregon. I think it should be in the dialogue for best offensive line in the country. Here we are heading into week 8 in the season, and they've proven it, right? They got 3 guys on this offensive line that chose to come back. Both tackles in their center had a chance to go to the NFL, decided to come back. Running back is relatively by committee. Bo Nix, we can do everything with his legs. But when I look at the biggest matchup is the other side. I think it's the best duo in the country in DTR, Zach Charbonnet. Find me another quarterback, running back. Alabama might make an argument, but I think Zach Charbonnet has proven himself over the course of his time at Michigan and UCLA to be that guy. Dorian, for all of the people that think that he's an up and down quarterback, you're lazy. You're just lazy. His entire high school career, he threw 304 pass attempts. Most quarterbacks in high school have over 1,000. I'm giving you context. I think it's important. He came in and started his second game of his career as a freshman at Oklahoma. His first 2 years were up and down. The first half against Colorado was up and down. In the pandemic year, you look at him in the last 2.5 years, 68 touchdowns, 12 picks. This season, completing 75% of his passes, and it's not check down city. I mean, it's home run city. He's taking shots down the field. He's got to read through the defense. I say that because he is a legitimate Heisman candidate against a legitimate Heisman candidate in Bo Nix. So the matchup to me is going to be the linebackers of Oregon. We know what Noah Sewell is, beast. To me, it's whoever plays the other spot. It's that position. It's the nickel defender. It's Bennett Williams. How do you handle all the misdirection, all the tempo, all the matchups that Chip Kelly will identify and try to attack, whether it's angle routes with Kaz Allen, whether it's 1 or 2 of his running backs out of the backfield, whether it's Dorian with his legs, like the discipline of the Ducks in the backfield will be challenged. We go back to week 1, it was exposed at times in Georgia. Since then, the Ducks have shorted up. I mean, they've shorted up. I expect them to meet the moment, but that's going to be the game. And I think this will be Alabama, Tennessee, USC, Utah. Like this is going to be a game that comes to the last 2-3 drives of the ball game. Wouldn't it be surprised if it came down to the final drive? And that's where I think the matchup's going to be early on. That's what I want to see. Then as the game goes on, I think they will, the matchups will they'll kind of evolve as it rolls, but that's the one that I'm coming in. If I was calling it, I'd be circling that other linebacker, nickel defender saying, how do you manage the second best offensive line in the league in UCLA. And how do you manage this duo of DTR and Charbonnet?
I like have chills just thinking about it. I'm excited to be able to see how that one plays out. And again, I think we'll know a lot more about what, there's a lot of different iterations of the Pac-12 championship game that are still unfolding, but I think there will be a little bit more clarity once that game goes down, at least what the paths are. So who are you taking?
I go back and forth every hour. I mean, back and forth every hour. Look, Dorian, last time Chip Kelly and the Bruins went to Eugene, they almost won. And Chase Griffin finished the game as the quarterback, right? If you think about that game, right?
Good point.
They had their chances. They threw a tough turnover before the half. I think might have been a pick six. But come up with their guy, right? Like Dorian, Charbonnet, they returned because in their words, on their social platforms, it was unfinished business. Well, here's the moment. And I think the program is very capable to handle the environment. I do not think it's going to be a thing. Like it's not like a net neutral, but I don't think it's going to like force a bunch of false starts and a bunch of issues. I don't think this team's going to get in their own head. I think it's going to be back and forth. I flip on the other side and well, it's best offensive line in the country, or one of them. The way they set plays up reminds you of Chip Kelly at Oregon with Kenny Dillingham and company. The defense, the back end specifically, has grown. We saw it against Arizona. Like, I don't know, Ash. Like, I think we have a hell of a game. Like, I think this rivals as good of a game as we've seen in years. Might argue the best game we had in years was last weekend in Salt Lake City. So I think we're going to have that. I guess I'll net out with like whoever has the ball at the end. Yeah. Because I really don't know. And I think Autzen is enough of an advantage to give them. I'd probably, if I had to pick, I'd pick Oregon. But I will not be shocked if we see UCLA win this ball game. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see both of these teams in the Pac-12 title. Like, I think we see the four best teams in this league have emerged. Two of them are playing at Autzen midday, and I can't wait to lock it in, man.
And by the way, I'm sure DTR wants you to pick Oregon. Like, I'm sure he probably just texted you and was like, pick the Ducks. Like, keep doing it.
Well, look, I am the only guy that I think has picked.
This was going to be my point, is that you're one of the only from day one.
Yeah.
Actual football media days.
Yeah. I'm a believer.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so hard to go back and forth on this one because they're so even.
Yeah. Which is what's going to make it fun. And when you talk about the top four teams emerging, the fact that there are four top 15 teams ranked right now, like in the Pac-12, it feels good. Yeah, it feels really good. I'm not going to lie. It does. It feels good. And you wonder if some of these teams had been ranked higher or ranked at all in the preseason, where they might be even now, but that's neither here nor there. The people are getting the recognition they deserve, and it's going to be a fun second half. I mean, we're past the halfway point, and it goes from here. Like week 8, I don't know. Yogs, I wish you had another one. Did you shake that up before we went on the air?
No, it was the universe. Like, it wanted bubbles today. Like, it wanted to pop off a little bit, and maybe it does this weekend.
Popping off happy hour presented by Deschutes. Enjoy the weekend, everybody.